Poor twins hold a young billionaire's hand and say, "They only asked us to sing at the party to make fun of us. Can you help us?" What happens next is unforgettable. The alarm went off at 5:30 in the morning, but Marcy was already awake. The light sleep of someone carrying too many worries rarely let her rest until the alarm sounded. She automatically reached out and silenced it before the noise could wake the girls on the small mattress on the other side of the room. The faint light of dawn barely seeped through the window, which was covered by a makeshift curtain. Marcy got up, feeling the cold floor beneath her feet, and walked to the cramped kitchen. The daily ritual began the same way: light the stove, heat the water for coffee, and try to make the little they had last as long as possible. As the water heated, she opened the cupboard and took out the 2-day-old bread. It wasn't moldy, just stale. Nothing a little butter can't fix, she thought, trying to ignore the tightness in her chest as she noticed the butter was also running out. In the nearly empty refrigerator, the remaining milk would be just enough for the twins. Marcy smiled, thinking of Lena and Ruby, 5 years of pure energy and smiles, even when there was little reason to smile. They were her reason for getting up every morning, her strength to face the pitying glances, her hope that one day things would be different. "Girls, time to wake up," Marcy called in a soft voice, entering the room. 2 pairs of identical eyes opened almost in sync. Ruby, always the first to be fully awake, sat up, rubbing her eyes. Lena took a little longer, curling up in the thin blanket as if she could capture 5 more minutes of dreams. "Come on, sleepyhead," Ruby said, nudging her sister. "Mom already made coffee." The smell of coffee and toast finally convinced Lena to get up. The 2 of them ran to the small bathroom, sharing a toothbrush with the familiarity of those who had always shared everything. Marcy watched her daughters as they ate. Ruby, with her talkative nature, was recounting an elaborate dream about a blue dog that could fly. Lena listened attentively, adding occasional details as if she had also been in the same dream, something that happened frequently between them. After breakfast came the hardest part of the morning. Marcy opened the small closet where they kept their few clothes. She took out 2 worn uniforms, with discreet patches on the knees and elbows. The twins dressed without complaint, accustomed to second-hand clothes. The bigger problem was their feet. There was only 1 pair of sneakers in usable condition, already tight for both of them. They took turns. Today would be Lena's day to wear the sneakers, while Ruby would wear the old sandals. "It's too tight, Mommy," Lena said, wincing as Marcy tried to fasten the worn Velcro. Marcy swallowed the lump in her throat before answering, "If everything goes well, Mommy will buy another pair next month, okay?" It was a promise she had been making for weeks, always postponed because the money barely covered rent and food. The twins nodded without questioning. They had learned early on that next month was a distant place where things might be better. The walk to school was 20 minutes long. Marcy held one of each daughter's hands, creating a small protective barrier against the world. They passed the grocery store, where the owner waved kindly. They passed the bakery, where the tempting aroma of fresh bread wafted from. They passed the shoe store, which the twins looked at with silent longing. "Look, Mommy, it's Mr. Wilson's house," Ruby pointed out as they passed a house with a white picket fence where an elderly man was watering his flowers. "Good morning, ladies," he greeted, and the girls responded with shy smiles. Small moments of kindness like this made the walk less arduous for Marcy. It was as if every smile directed at her daughters was a reminder that, despite the hardships, they were not completely alone in the world. A few blocks from the school, Marcy neatened her daughter's hair, checked if they were presentable, and gave her daily advice. "Remember, girls, head high, back straight, and be polite." It was her mantra against prejudice, her way of arming them against the stares and comments that would inevitably come. The twins repeated the words like a well-learned lesson. They arrived at the school building, an imposing structure that made Marcy feel even smaller. Children from wealthy families stepped out of expensive cars, wearing pristine uniforms and designer backpacks. Marcy swallowed her wounded pride and walked with her daughters to the entrance. "You go straight to your classroom, like always," she reminded them. "Mommy goes in through the side door, remember?" The twins nodded. They knew their mother was the school's janitor, something that never bothered them, but sometimes led to cruel comments from other children. Marcy knelt and hugged them both. "Be good. Learn a lot. I'll see you at lunch." The girls waved and entered through the main door, trying to blend in with the other children. Marcy watched them until they disappeared down the hall before heading to the staff entrance. In the classroom, the twins sat together in the back row. The morning passed with lessons in math and reading. Lena and Ruby remained quiet, answering only when called on directly by Ms. Bennett, their teacher. After lunch, a simple sandwich Marcy had prepared, it was time for music class. The children headed excitedly to the special room at the end of the hall. The music room was different from the others. It had a piano in the corner, colorful drums stacked in an open cabinet, and flutes lined up on a shelf. The walls displayed posters of instruments and musical notes. It was a place that always fascinated the twins, though they rarely touched the instruments like the other children. "Today we're going to talk about our spring recital," announced Mrs. Miller, the music teacher, clapping her hands to get their attention. "We need to decide who will do what." A buzz of excitement went through the room. The spring recital was the most important event of the semester, with parents and family filling the auditorium. "I want to dance," exclaimed Emma, a girl with blonde hair and a pink bow who always wore sparkling shoes. "I'll play the piano," declared Tyler, whose parents had hired a private tutor for him since he was 3. Mrs. Miller wrote the names on the board, smiling. "Great. And who will sing the main solo?" Several hands shot up immediately. The teacher scanned the room, considering the options. "We need someone with a different kind of voice this year," she commented. It was then that Brittany, the girl who always sat far from the twins, turned and pointed at them with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "What if it were them?" she suggested, her voice sweet but laced with venom. The twins, Josh, the most popular boy in the class, chuckled. "Yeah, they never do anything in the shows." Emma leaned over to whisper something in Madison's ear, but spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Imagine them singing, in those clothes." Madison covered her mouth to stifle a giggle. "And with their mismatched shoes." The comment sparked more giggles throughout the group. Everyone knew the twins shared a single pair of sneakers in good condition. Mrs. Miller frowned, ready to intervene, but before she could speak, Tyler added, "They could sing really quietly, since they never talk anyway." He mimicked an exaggerated whisper, causing more laughter. The twins shrank in their seats, feeling the heat rise in their faces. Ruby squeezed Lena's hand under the table. The teacher clapped her hands sharply. "That's enough. We do not tolerate that kind of behavior in this classroom." She looked at the twins with a kind expression, trying to repair the damage. "Lena, Ruby, would you like to participate in some way? Perhaps in the choir?" Before they could answer, Brittany insisted, now with false innocence, "But Mrs. Miller, I really think they should sing. Who knows, maybe they have hidden talents." Mrs. Miller hesitated. It was clear that Brittany and her group were being cruel, but at the same time, she didn't want to exclude the twins from the opportunity. After a few seconds of consideration, she approached the two of them. "Would you like to try? You don't have to decide now." Lena and Ruby looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between them. The invitation had come from cruelty, but maybe it was a chance to show they were more than just the janitor's daughters. "Can we think about it?" asked Lena, her voice barely a whisper. "Of course," Mrs. Miller replied with an encouraging smile. "The decision is yours." She turned to continue the class, directing the attention away from the twins. But the damage was already done. For the rest of the class, they felt the stares and the whispers. "Do you think they'll really try? I bet they'll be off-key. What are they going to wear? Those patched-up uniforms?" When the bell rang, signaling the end of class, the twins were the first to get up, quickly packing their notebooks. In the hallway, away from prying eyes, Ruby stopped and looked at her sister. "Do you want to sing?" Lena bit her lip, thoughtful. "I don't know. They just want to laugh at us." "But what if we were good?" There was a spark of defiance in Ruby's eyes, something Lena rarely saw in her calmer sister. For a moment, she imagined what it would be like to go on stage, to sing, and to surprise everyone. "Let's think about it," she finally replied. We have to talk to Mom." What the twins didn't know was that this proposal, born from childhood cruelty, would be the beginning of a journey that would transform not only their lives, but the lives of everyone around them. Sometimes, the greatest stories begin in the most unlikely places, even in a music room where two 5-year-old girls face the first of many difficult choices. The bell rang, signaling the end of the school day. The hallway filled with children, a noisy river flowing toward the freedom of the afternoon. Lena and Ruby walked together, as always, holding their worn backpacks tightly. They tried to blend in, to disappear among the other students, but it was impossible not to hear. "Look, it's the singing twins," Brittany said as she passed them, loud enough for other kids to hear. Emma and Madison laughed, leaning toward each other. "It's going to be hilarious to see them on stage with those shoes." The words seemed to follow them to the schoolyard. It was nothing new. Comments like these were part of their daily routine. Usually, they would lower their heads and keep walking, mentally repeating their mother's mantra, head high, back straight. But today was different. Today, the words hurt more. "Do you think they'll each wear one shoe, one on each foot?" Tyler commented, sparking a wave of laughter. Ruby squeezed her sister's hand tightly. Her eyes, always expressive, were welling up with tears. Lena, usually the more sensitive of the two, felt something different grow inside her. Not just sadness, but a kind of determination she couldn't explain. They walked out of the school gates, lagging behind as the other students ran to waiting cars or gathered in groups to walk home together. The twins knew they were supposed to wait there. Marcy would finish her cleaning shift in an hour. Until then, they would sit on the concrete bench near the gate, doing their homework or drawing with the worn-out colored pencils they shared. But today, something changed in that routine. "Let's walk for a bit," Lena suggested, surprising her sister. Ruby hesitated, but Mom said to wait here. "Just over there," Lena insisted, pointing to the sidewalk that curved around the school. "I don't want to listen to them." Ruby understood. Behind them, Brittany and her friends were still in the yard, casting looks and laughs in their direction. She nodded, and the two began to walk, slowly moving away. The afternoon was mild, with the autumn sun painting everything in a soft golden light. Dry leaves crunched under their feet, the shared sneaker that Ruby was wearing today, and the old sandals on Lena's feet. They walked in silence, turning the corner of the school onto a tree-lined street they didn't usually frequent. "Do you think we should accept?" Ruby asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Lena knew exactly what her sister was talking about. "I don't know. They'll laugh at us. They already do." It was true. No matter what they did, stay invisible or try to stand out, the result was the same. Ruby stopped walking, her eyes fixed on some distant point. "When we sing with Mom, she says it's beautiful." Lena nodded. Marcy used to sing while doing laundry or cleaning the house, old songs she had learned from her own mother. And the twins would always join in, their small voices intertwining naturally, creating harmonies that made Marcy smile and say they had a gift. "But what if Mom only says that because she loves us?" Lena questioned. Ruby didn't get a chance to answer. A man turned the corner, walking toward them. He was tall, with dark, slightly disheveled hair and thin-rimmed glasses. He wore jeans and a blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He carried a leather briefcase under his arm and seemed distracted, looking up at the sky as he walked. The girls stopped, unsure if they should turn back. They weren't used to talking to strangers without their mom nearby, but there was something about the man, perhaps his carefree way of walking, or the slight smile on his face as he watched a bird fly by, that didn't seem threatening. As he got closer, he slowed his pace, noticing the two small figures standing on the sidewalk. He smiled gently, the way polite adults smile at children they don't know, without intimacy, but with respect. "Hello," he said, ready to continue on his way. It was then that something unexpected happened. Without planning it, without even exchanging a glance, the twins stepped forward and each took one of his hands. The man stopped, surprised. He looked down at the two pairs of identical eyes staring up at him with unnerving intensity. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice calm despite his obvious confusion. Lena, normally the more reserved one, was the one who spoke. They invited us to sing at the party, but only to make fun of us. Can you help us?" The question hung in the air, so direct and vulnerable that for a moment no one said anything. The man looked from one to the other, trying to understand what was happening and why. Of all the people on the street, they had chosen to stop him. Ruby added, as if feeling the need to explain, "The school party. They laughed at our shoes." The man then crouched down, getting to the girl's level. His eyes, they now noticed, were a deep blue, framed by small wrinkles at the corners, the kind of wrinkles that form when someone smiles a lot. But right then, he wasn't smiling. There was something in his gaze that was both sad and understanding. "My name is Grayson," he said. "What are your names?" "I'm Lena," answered the one who had spoken first. "And I'm Ruby," the other one added. Grayson nodded, as if memorizing their names. "And why do you think I can help?" The twins looked at each other, one of those moments of silent communication that so intrigued anyone watching them. "We don't know," Ruby admitted. "We just had a feeling." "You seem nice," Lena added. "And different." Grayson smiled then, a smile that reached his eyes, softening the lines on his face. There was something about these two children, the way they presented themselves to the world, small but dignified despite their worn clothes and the air of having faced more hardship than they should have, that touched something deep inside him. Looking at them, Grayson saw a reflection of himself almost 30 years ago. The boy in second-hand clothes, with sneakers patched up with duct tape, who stood at the back of the class to avoid attention. The boy who hid in the library during recess to escape the taunts. The boy who drew houses and buildings in the margins of his notebooks, dreaming of the day he could build something solid, something no one could take away from him. "You know you're not supposed to talk to strangers, right?" he asked, more out of responsibility than reprimand. Ruby nodded. "But you don't seem like a stranger now." "We've already told you our names." The childish logic made Grayson smile again. He took a closer look at the two of them. Identical at first glance, same dark, expressive eyes, same brown hair in simple ponytails, same light olive skin. But now he noticed the small differences. Lena had a more serious, more analytical gaze. Ruby seemed to have a more restless energy, her fingers tapping lightly against her leg as she spoke. And then his eyes caught the details that were likely the source of the mockery. Lena's uniform had a discreet patch on the elbow, stitched with a slightly different colored thread. Ruby wore a worn but clean sneaker, while Lena was in old sandals that looked too small for her feet. "About the party," Grayson began, weighing each word. "And why do you want to participate if you think they're making fun of you?" Another exchange of glances between the twins. "Because," Ruby started. "We never participate in anything," Lena completed, "and it would make Mom happy." "But we're scared," Ruby admitted. "We don't have nice clothes or matching shoes." Grayson felt a lump in his throat. He remembered the only time he had participated in a school performance, when he was 7. His mother worked 2 jobs and had no money to buy the requested costume. She had spent nights sewing something similar to what the others would wear, using fabric from an old curtain. He had performed, but the giggles and stares had hurt so much that he never volunteered for anything again. "When is this party?" he asked. "Next week, on Friday," Lena replied, "at 6 o'clock. Grayson checked his watch. He had a meeting in less than an hour, but something inside him had already made a decision that his rational mind was still processing. "Yes, I can," he said finally. The twins' faces lit up with a mix of surprise and hope. "Really?" Ruby asked, as if she couldn't believe it. "Really?" Grayson confirmed. "But first, we need to find your mother. She must be worried." The girls agreed, explaining that their mother worked at the school as a janitor and would be finishing her shift soon. They suggested going back to the bench near the gate, where they usually waited. As they walked back, Grayson talked to them, asking about school, what they liked to do, and the song they would sing. He found out they loved to draw, that Lena dreamed of being a doctor, that Ruby wanted to work with animals, and that they both had been singing the songs their mother taught them since they were little. When they reached the school gate, Grayson looked at his watch again. His meeting started in 40 minutes on the other side of town. "I have to go now," he said. "But I'll come back here tomorrow at the same time. If your mother allows it, we can talk more. And you'll help us with the party," Lena insisted. "I will," Grayson promised. "But first, I need to meet your mom and get her permission." "That's important, understand?" The twins nodded, though there was a shadow of doubt in their eyes, the doubt of those who have seen adults make promises they don't keep. "I'll be here tomorrow," he reinforced. "You have my word as an architect." "What's an architect?" Ruby asked. "Someone who designs houses and buildings and then helps build them," Grayson explained. The girls' eyes widened. "You make real houses?" Lena asked, impressed. "I do," he replied, smiling. "Now I have to go. Be good, and don't leave here until your mum comes." The twins waved as he walked away. Grayson looked back once, seeing the two of them sitting on the bench, small figures against the large school building. Something inside him warmed, and at the same time ached. The next day, as promised, Grayson returned to the school at dismissal time. He found the twins on the same bench, but this time a woman was with them, small, looking tired, but with the same expressive eyes as her daughters. The initial conversation was difficult, filled with suspicion on Marcy's part, which was completely understandable. What strange man approaches children on the street and offers help? But gradually, as Grayson explained his intentions and a little of his own story, her reserve began to lessen. "I just want to help them with the performance," he explained. "I know what it's like to feel different." Marcy studied his face for a long moment, as if searching for signs of falsehood or ulterior motives. What she found was only sincerity. "They do sing well," she said finally. "Really, it's not just a mother's bias." "I believe it," Grayson replied, "and I'd like to help them show that to everyone." After more conversation, after Grayson showed his ID and explained that he worked at an architecture firm just a few blocks away, Marcy finally agreed, still cautious, but willing to trust a little. The next day, with Marcy's permission, Grayson took the twins to a simple department store downtown. It wasn't luxurious, but it sold new, reasonably good quality clothes at affordable prices. The girls had never been in a store to buy new clothes. Everything they had came from donations or thrift shops. "You can choose whatever you want for the performance," Grayson said. The twins looked at each other, paralyzed by so many options. Seeing their hesitation, Grayson gently guided them down the aisle, stopping at the children's dress section. "How about we try some on?" he suggested. With the help of a patient saleswoman, the girls tried on several dresses. The joy on their faces as they saw themselves in the mirror, dressed in something new and beautiful, was a gift Grayson hadn't expected to receive. After much deliberation, they chose two simple but elegant dresses, blue for Lena, green for Ruby, colors that matched their personalities, though they were identical in style. The next stop was the shoe department. There, Grayson insisted that each of them choose a complete pair of shoes. "We don't have to take turns?" Ruby asked, confused. "No," Grayson replied, feeling something tighten in his chest. "You'll each have your own pair." They chose simple black flats, comfortable and suitable for the performance. When everything was selected and paid for, they left the store with 2 bags, one for each girl. On the way back to the school, where Marcy was waiting for them, Grayson stopped and crouched down again to be at their level. "What you have is special," he said, looking intently into each of their eyes. "Don't let anyone hide that." The twins nodded, holding their bags tightly as if they contained precious treasures, and for them, they did. When they got to the school, they handed the bags to Marcy to keep until the day of the performance. Grayson said goodbye, promising to come back to see them sing. "I'll be there," he assured them, with a conviction that left no room for doubt. As he walked away, he heard Ruby's voice calling him. He turned and saw the two of them running towards him. They stopped in front of him, looking up with solemn expressions. "Thank you," Lena said simply. "For believing in us," Ruby added. Grayson smiled, feeling an unexpected emotion wash over him. For a brief moment, he saw the boy he had been again, lonely, insecure, believing he didn't deserve to be in certain places or have certain things. And then he saw the man he had become, now able to extend the hand that no one had extended to him. "The pleasure was all mine," he replied, and it was the truth. The twins smiled and ran back to their mother, their small figures filled with a newfound confidence. Grayson watched them for a moment before continuing on his way, carrying with him the certainty that he would be there on Friday, not just to see them sing, but to witness the beginning of something important, though he didn't yet know exactly what. The afternoon sun was beginning to dip toward the horizon when Marcy finished her cleaning shift at the school. She put away the cleaning chemicals in the supply closet, changed out of her damp work clothes into her regular clothes, and walked to the schoolyard where Lena and Ruby were waiting for her on the usual bench. The twins lit up when they saw her, running in her direction with an energy that seemed endless, even after a long day of classes. "Mommy!" they exclaimed in unison, each holding a paper bag as if they were carrying treasures. "Hello, my little ones," Marcy smiled, crouching to receive their tight hugs. "How was your day?" "We have a surprise," said Ruby, bouncing with excitement. "A big surprise," added Lena, her eyes shining. Marcy frowned. "What kind of surprise?" "We can't show you here," explained Ruby, looking around as if sharing a big secret. "It's for when we get home." "All right," Marcy agreed, intrigued and a little worried. Surprises weren't common in their lives, at least not the good kind. The three of them walked together through the familiar streets, the twins chattering about their day at school, about math class, and a story the teacher had told. But there was something different today, a contained excitement, a secret that made them exchange knowing glances every few steps. Marcy watched her daughters with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Ruby hugged her bag to her chest, while Lena carried hers carefully, as if it contained something fragile. These weren't the reusable grocery bags they had at home. They were new bags, with a store logo printed on the side. They climbed the 3 flights of stairs to their small apartment. As soon as the door closed behind them, the twins could barely contain their excitement. "Close your eyes, Mommy," Ruby requested. "And no peeking," Lena added. Marcy obeyed, a tired but curious smile on her lips. She heard the girls run to the bedroom, followed by the sounds of paper bags being opened. "You can open them," they announced together. When Marcy opened her eyes, she almost lost her balance. The twins were standing before her, each holding a dress unlike any she had ever seen in their hands before. New, spotless, without patches. A soft blue like a spring sky for Lena, a delicate green like the first leaves of May for Ruby. And not only that, at their feet, 2 open boxes revealed shiny black flats, a pair for each of them. "What? How?" Marcy sat down in the nearest chair, her legs suddenly weak. "For the school performance," Ruby explained, twirling with the green dress held against her body. "Aren't they beautiful, Mommy?" Marcy touched the fabric with trembling fingers. It was soft, good quality. It was nothing extravagant or overly expensive, but for someone who had always depended on donations and thrift stores, it felt like an unimaginable luxury. "Who gave these to you?" she asked, her voice low and careful. The twins exchanged glances again, that silent communication they always shared. "A nice man," Ruby answered simply. "What man?" Marcy insisted, a knot forming in her throat. "The architect," Lena explained. "His name is Grayson. We talked to him after school. And he promised to help us with the performance," Ruby completed. Marcy frowned, trying to understand. Then she remembered. The tall man with glasses and dark hair who had approached the girls at the school exit 2 days ago. He had introduced himself as an architect, said the twins had asked for his help, showed his ID. He seemed sincere, but Marcy had been so tired that day she had barely paid attention. He had mentioned something about helping with the performance, but she had imagined it would be with rehearsals or advice, not this. "You can't accept gifts like this," she said finally. "We'll have to return them." The twins' faces fell simultaneously. "But Mommy," Ruby began, tears welling up immediately. "It's for the performance," Lena added. "Everyone else will be dressed up. If we don't wear them." She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't have to. Marcy was all too familiar with the cruel comments her daughters faced because of their second-hand clothes and shared shoes. "He said he used to wear old clothes when he was a kid too," Ruby explained, "and that nobody helped him. That's why he wanted to help us," Lena concluded. Marcy felt tears welling up. Her pride told her to refuse, to return everything, to show that they could manage on their own. But her mother's love saw the sparkle in her daughter's eyes, the hope, the chance to feel for one night, like the other children. "Can I see the dresses?" she asked, her voice softening. The girls handed over the garments with reverent care. Marcy examined every seam, every detail. They weren't extravagant or overly expensive. They were simple, tasteful, appropriate for children their age. The kind of clothes she would have chosen if she could have. "Try them on," she said finally. The small apartment filled with laughter as the twins ran to the bedroom. Minutes later, they returned, transformed. The dresses fit perfectly, as if made to measure. The flats matched perfectly. For the first time, Marcy saw her daughters as others might see them, not as the poor girls in worn clothes, but as two beautiful children, full of life and potential. The emotion finally overflowed. A tear ran down Marcy's tired face. "Don't cry, Mommy," Ruby pleaded, running to hug her. "How, you don't like them?" Lena asked, worried. Marcy wrapped them in her arms, feeling the new fabric of the dresses under her calloused fingers. "I love them," she whispered. "You look beautiful." The week passed quickly, filled with rehearsals and preparations. The twins practiced their song every night, filling the small apartment with their harmonious voices. Marcy watched, amazed at the confidence growing in them with each passing day. On the morning of the performance, the excitement was palpable. The girls could barely eat their breakfast, anxious for the big moment. Marcy dropped them off at school with promises to be back in time to see them perform at 6 in the evening. Her cleaning shift would end at 4, leaving enough time to go home, shower, change clothes, and return for the performance. She had saved some money to buy flowers, just a small bouquet, but she wanted to have something to give her daughters after their performance. The day went on as usual until, at 3 o'clock, the cleaning supervisor called her into her office. "We need you to stay late today, Marcy," the woman said bluntly. "There was a problem with the night shift, and the auditorium needs to be spotless for the performance." Marcy's heart sank. "But my daughters are performing today. I need to watch them." The supervisor barely looked up from the papers on her desk. "I'm sorry, but we don't have another option. You're the only one available." "I can clean the auditorium now and leave at my regular time," Marcy suggested, trying to keep her voice steady. "The auditorium is being used for rehearsals until 5. You'll need to clean between the end of rehearsals and the start of the performance." "But that means that you'll be working during the performance." "Yes," the supervisor completed. "If that's a problem, I can find someone who needs this job more." The veiled threat hung in the air. Marcy swallowed the response she wanted to give. She couldn't lose her job. The rent needed to be paid, the bills wouldn't wait. The food on the table depended on that minimum wage salary. "I'll do it," she said finally, her voice barely audible. She left the office with a heavy heart. How would she tell the girls? How would she explain that she wouldn't be there for their most important moment? Would they understand that she had no choice? During lunch, she met with the twins as usual. They were so excited, talking about the performance, about how they had rehearsed, about how they couldn't wait to show off their new dresses. Marcy tried to smile, tried to share their excitement, but Ruby, always sensitive to her mother's emotions, noticed something was wrong. "What's wrong, Mommy?" she asked, her big eyes fixed on Marcy's face. "Nothing, sweetie," Marcy lied, hating herself for it. "Something's wrong," Lena insisted. "You're sad." Marcy took a deep breath. There was no hiding it. They always knew. "Mommy has to work during the performance," she said finally. "I'll be cleaning the auditorium while you sing." The twins and faces transformed, from joy to disappointment in an instant. Marcy felt as if someone had ripped a piece of her heart out. "But you promised," Ruby began, tears immediately forming. "I know, my love, and Mommy wanted to be there so much, more than anything in the world. But you have to work," Lena completed, her voice small but understanding. Marcy nodded, unable to speak through the lump in her throat. "It's okay," Lena said, always the stronger one in a crisis. "We understand." "I don't understand," Ruby protested, a tear rolling down her face. "It's not fair." "It isn't," Marcy agreed, hugging her. "It's not fair at all, but I'll be there even if you don't see me. I'll be cleaning, but I'll be listening to every note. And afterwards, we'll celebrate at home, just the three of us." The girls nodded, trying to be brave, but the sparkle had dimmed in their eyes. Marcy felt the weight of guilt and injustice. Once again, her job was preventing her from being present for an important moment in her daughters' lives. When the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch, Marcy hugged them both extra tightly. "You're going to be amazing, Mommy is sure of it." She returned to work with a heavy heart. During the afternoon, while cleaning bathrooms and hallways, an idea came to her. She couldn't be in the audience, but she could leave something for the girls to know she was there in spirit. At the small shop near the school, she bought a simple card. Sitting on a bench during her 15-minute break, she wrote in her careful handwriting, "Even if you can't see me, Mommy is with you." She folded the card and placed it in the girls' lunchbox, where they would surely find it before the performance. The hours passed. At 5 o'clock, as ordered, Marcy entered the empty auditorium. The rehearsals were over, and she had exactly 1 hour to make everything spotless. Sweep, mop, wipe down the chairs, check the bathrooms. She worked feverishly, faster than she had ever worked, hoping to finish in time to at least watch her daughters a performance. But it was too much work for one person. When the doors opened and the first parents began to arrive, Marcy was still mopping on the far side of the auditorium. She hid in the shadows, continuing her work as the hall filled up. From her corner, she caught a glimpse of the children being organized backstage. She tried to find her daughters, but there were too many people, too much confusion. The principal went on stage to welcome everyone, and Marcy knew she wouldn't be able to see her girls perform. She would be at the back of the auditorium, cleaning the bathrooms, when their turn came. With a heavy heart, she continued her work, moving silently in the shadows as the performance began. From a distance, she heard the choir sing, heard the piano piece performed by Tyler, saw the dance of the girls with pink bows, and then, just as she was about to enter the women's restroom with her bucket and mop, she heard the announcer say, "And now, a special duet by Lena and Ruby Martinez." Marcy froze, the bucket almost slipping from her hand. She turned slowly, looking at the stage from across the auditorium. Two small figures were walking up the steps, hand in hand, one in a blue dress, the other in green. Their hair was styled with simple but beautiful ribbons, matching their dresses. The new flats shone under the stage lights. From where she stood, Marcy couldn't see her daughters' faces, but she knew their bodies, their movements, the way Lena always stood a little straighter, how Ruby swayed slightly from one foot to the other when she was nervous. A silence fell over the auditorium, perhaps of expectation, perhaps of surprise at seeing the janitor's daughters on stage. Marcy held her breath, and then the voices began. Soft at first, almost hesitant but perfectly harmonized. A simple melody that Marcy recognized immediately, the song she sang while doing laundry, the song her own mother had sung to her. The music flowed through the auditorium, the twins, voices growing stronger with each note. They were not trained or sophisticated voices, but they had a purity, a natural harmony that only twins could create. They sang from the heart, from the soul, the simple story of a bird that flies free despite a broken wing. Marcy felt tears stream freely down her face. She leaned against the wall, unable to move, completely forgetting her work, her supervisor, everything except the voices of her daughters filling the space. The entire auditorium seemed spellbound. No one coughed, no one moved. The whispers and giggles that Marcy had expected to hear never came. There was only the music, crystal clear and true. When the last note faded, there was a moment of absolute silence. And then, the applause. Not polite or forced applause, but genuine, enthusiastic applause. People were getting to their feet, smiles on their faces. Marcy saw, through her tears, the school principal applauding vigorously, a look of genuine surprise on her face. The twins took a small bow just as they had practiced, and when they stood up, their faces searched the audience not for Marcy, who they knew wasn't there, but for someone. Their gazes found a spot in the third row, and their smiles widened. Following their line of sight, Marcy saw a man with glasses, Grayson, she presumed, standing, applauding with visibly teary eyes. The girls came down from the stage as the announcer called the next act. Marcy wanted to run to them, hug them, tell them how proud she was. But the supervisor appeared in the hallway, giving her a stern look. "The bathrooms still aren't clean, Marcy." Swallowing her tears and her pride, she nodded and went back to work. From the hallway, she could hear the rest of the performance. She cleaned mechanically, her heart torn between joy for her daughters, success, and the pain of not being able to share that moment with them. When she finally finished, the performance was over. Families were leaving the auditorium, chatting excitedly. Marcy slipped through the hallways, looking for her daughters. She found them in the main lobby. They were surrounded by a small group of children and parents, receiving compliments, and next to them, a hand gently resting on each of their shoulders, was the man with glasses. Grayson. Marcy hesitated, unsure if she should approach at that moment. She was still in her cleaning uniform, still carried the smell of chemicals. But before she could decide, Ruby saw her. "Mommy!" she shouted, running towards her, with Lena right behind. They threw themselves into her arms, not caring about the uniform or who was watching. "You were incredible," Marcy whispered, hugging them tightly. Mommy heard everything. It was perfect. "Did you get to see?" Lena asked, looking up with hope. "A little bit," Marcy replied. It wasn't exactly a lie. She had seen their silhouettes on stage. "We were scared," Ruby admitted. "But then we saw your note in the lunchbox. And we knew you were there, even if we couldn't see you," Lena added. Marcy felt new tears forming. How had she raised two such understanding, such strong children? At that moment, she realized Grayson was approaching. He stopped at a respectful distance, smiling gently. "Your daughters were the best part of the night," he said. "Everyone is talking about them." "Thank you," Marcy replied, suddenly conscious of her uniform, her rough hands, her visible exhaustion. "And thank you for the dresses, the shoes. We really appreciate it." Grayson waved it off. "It was a pleasure. It was worth every penny just to see this moment." The twins turned to him, still clinging to Marcy's waist. "We were scared," Ruby said. "Thanks for helping us." He crouched down to their level, his eyes shining with genuine emotion. "It was the best thing I've ever seen," he replied simply. And in that moment, under the lights of the school lobby, with the girls between her and this stranger who had become an unexpected ally, Marcy felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a small flame of hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, the world could be kinder to her daughters than it had been to her. The day after the performance dawned sunny, as if the sky itself wanted to celebrate the twins' small triumph. At school, something had changed. The looks were different, some of surprise, others of admiration, some even of newfound respect. The giggles and mean comments about their shoes and clothes subsided, replaced by whispers about their voices and their performance. Brittany and her group still cast disdainful glances, but there was something new there, perhaps a pang of envy for the applause the twins had received. The music teacher, Mrs. Miller, smiled at them during class and made a point to tell the whole class how wonderful they had been. "You have a natural gift," she said, "a harmony that not even adult singers can easily achieve." The girls lowered their heads, still not used to public praise, but their hearts warmed at the kind words. When the bell rang, signaling the end of classes, Lena and Ruby gathered their things slowly. They were in no hurry. They knew Marcy would only finish her shift in an hour. As always, they would sit on the bench by the gate, do their homework, and wait. As they walked out to the yard, however, a familiar figure surprised them. Leaning against a tree near the school gate, Grayson was watching the children leave. When he saw them, he smiled and gave a discreet wave. "He came," Ruby whispered, squeezing her sister's hand. The two of them ran towards him, stopping a few feet away, suddenly shy. "Hello," Grayson said. "I thought I'd pay a visit. How are you feeling after yesterday?" "Good," Lena replied. "Everyone was talking about us," Ruby added. "Mrs. Miller said we have a natural gift." "And she's absolutely right," Grayson agreed. "You were extraordinary." A brief silence settled. The kind of silence that comes when people are still getting to know each other, figuring out each other's rhythm. "You have to wait for your mom, right?" he asked finally. The twins nodded. "I spoke with her on the phone earlier," Grayson explained. "She said I could take you for a snack if you'd like. So I know a park nearby with a simple coffee shop." The girl's eyes widened in surprise. Marcy rarely allowed them to go out with anyone but herself. "Did she really say yes?" asked Lena, always the more cautious one. "She did," Grayson confirmed, showing his phone with Marcy's text message on the screen. "We'll bring something back for her too." That sounded right. Marcy never refused food, especially if it was for her daughters. "We can go," Lena decided, after a quick glance at her sister. The park was just 2 blocks from the school. It was a pleasant place with leafy trees, wooden benches, and a small coffee shop in one corner. It wasn't fancy, but it had a welcoming atmosphere that immediately made the girls feel at ease. "What would you like to have?" Grayson asked as they approached the counter. The twins looked at the menu, written in colorful chalk on the board behind the counter. "Can we choose anything?" Ruby asked hesitantly. "Anything," he confirmed. After carefully considering all the options, as if it were a decision of vital importance, they chose grilled cheese sandwiches and orange juice. Grayson ordered a coffee for himself and added a chicken sandwich and a lemonade to take to Marcy. They sat on a bench under a large tree. The afternoon sun filtered through the leaves, creating dancing patterns of light and shadow on the ground. The girls ate with the enthusiasm of those who rarely get the chance to have a snack outside of home. "Is it good?" Grayson asked, watching them with a smile. "Very good," Ruby replied between bites. "The best sandwich I've ever had," Lena agreed. Grayson doubted it was truly the best sandwich in the world. It was just melted cheese between 2 slices of bread, but the genuine joy on their faces made him think about how many small things he took for granted could be extraordinary for someone with so few opportunities. As they ate, they talked about simple things: school, their favorite subjects, the book the teacher was reading to the class. Lena talked about how she loved science classes, especially when they studied the human body. Ruby told him about the time a puppy was brought to biology class and how she decided she would be a veterinarian one day. "Fiosama, what about you?" Ruby asked suddenly. "What do you do as an architect?" "I design buildings," Grayson explained. "Houses, schools, offices. I plan how they'll be built, what materials to use, how to make the best use of sunlight, how to make the spaces work well for people." "That sounds cool," Lena commented. "Do you have to be good at math?" "Yes, very good," he replied. "But I also need to know about art, about history, about how people live and work." Ruby frowned, absorbing the information. Then, with the direct frankness only children possess, she asked the question that was on her mind. "Were you always rich?" The question caught Grayson by surprise. He almost choked on his coffee but recovered quickly. "Rich?" he repeated, reflecting. "I don't consider myself rich, Ruby. I have enough now." But no, it wasn't always like this. The twins watched him attentively, as if their eyes could see right through him, searching for the truth. Grayson put down his cup and looked toward the horizon for a moment, deciding how to answer. There was something about these 2 children that made him want to be completely honest. "I was poor too," he said finally, his voice calm but heavy with memories. "I wore shoes with holes in them. I lived in a tiny room with my mom, but I studied. I drew. And today I'm an architect." The girls stared at him, their sandwiches momentarily forgotten. A new connection was forming, a deep recognition that transcended the age difference. "Did your mum work a lot?" Lena asked. "A lot," Grayson confirmed. "2 jobs. I rarely saw her during the week." "Like ours," Ruby said softly. "Yes," he agreed, "like yours. She did everything she could to give me a better life." "And it worked," Lena observed. "It did," Grayson smiled. "Because she always insisted that I study, even when it was hard, even when the other boys made fun of my clothes or my patched-up shoes." Ruby nodded, understanding perfectly. "Like they do with us." "Exactly," Grayson said. "But you know what? Those kids who made fun of me, I have no idea where they are today. It doesn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I kept trying, even when it was difficult." He paused, looking at the attentive faces of the twins, so young yet already carrying the weight of a hard life. Something inside him warmed and tightened at the same time. "You can be whatever you want to be," he continued, his voice gentle but firm. If you study, if you believe in yourselves, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Ever. The words hung in the afternoon air, simple but powerful. They weren't empty advice from an adult who didn't understand. They were the lived truth of someone who had been exactly where they were now. Ruby finished her sandwich, wiped her hands on a napkin, and without a word, took Grayson's hand. A small gesture, but full of meaning. Lena, always more reserved, leaned slightly and rested her head on his shoulder. None of the three spoke for a few moments. It wasn't necessary. The sun continued to create dancing patterns through the leaves. People passed by in the park. Life went on around them. But there, on that bench, under that tree, something important had happened. A bond had formed, soft, true, unexpected. When they finally got up to take Marcy's snack back to her, they walked back to the school in comfortable silence. Not as strangers who had met just a few days ago, but as people who somehow had recognized each other. "Can I come back tomorrow?" Grayson asked when they reached the school gate. The twins exchanged a look, that silent communication only they understood, and then smiled simultaneously. "Yes," Lena replied. "Please," Ruby added. And just like that, with the simplicity only children possess, a friendship began. A friendship that, though none of them could know it at that moment, would forever change the course of their lives. In the weeks that followed the performance, a new rhythm was established. 3 times a week, Grayson would wait for the twins at the school exit. Sometimes he would take them for a snack in the park. Other times they would just walk together, talking about their day. He helped them with their homework, especially math, which Lena loved and Ruby found challenging. Marcy observed this new friendship with a mixture of gratitude and caution. She saw the joy in her daughters' eyes when they spoke of him, noticed their growing confidence, and saw how they returned from these meetings with new ideas and questions. But she also worried. Life had taught her to be wary of unexplained kindness. On a rainy Thursday, when Grayson brought the girls back to the school to meet Marcy after her shift, they were soaked and laughing. They had jumped in puddles along the way, sheltered by a single large umbrella that could barely cover the 3 of them. "Sorry," he said, seeing Marcy's concerned expression. "The rain caught us by surprise on the way back." "It's okay," she replied, pulling small towels from her bag to dry her daughter's hair. They seemed to have had fun. "It was so much fun, Mommy," exclaimed Ruby. "And we made paper boats and set them sailing in the water. And Grayson taught us how to calculate how long it would take for them to reach the other side," Lena added. Marcy smiled, recognizing his ability to turn even a rainy day into an opportunity for learning and fun. "Are you coming for dinner tonight?" she asked, surprising herself with the spontaneous invitation. It was Grayson's turn to look surprised. After weeks, it was the first time Marcy had invited him to their home. "I'd love to," he replied. "Can I bring something?" "No need," Marcy said. "It's simple, but there's enough." "Are you really coming?" asked Ruby, her eyes shining with excitement. "I am," Grayson confirmed. "What time should I arrive?" "At 7, Marcy replied. "The girls know the address." On the way home, the twins chattered non-stop about Grayson's impending visit. Marcy listened with a smile, but her mind was busy with other concerns. The apartment was small, the furniture was old, the dishes didn't match. What would he think? Would he judge her life, her choices, her poverty? As soon as they arrived, Marcy had the girls start their homework while she began preparing dinner. She cleaned the small apartment, though it was already tidy. Organization was her point of pride, something no one could take from her even in the hardest times. Dinner would be pasta with tomato sauce and some vegetables, simple, but nutritious and tasty. It was the twins' favorite dish and something that fit her tight budget. At 7 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. The girls raced to the door, fighting over who would open it first. Grayson was there, holding a small bouquet of colorful wildflowers and a box of chocolates. "5 flowers for the lady of the house," he said, handing the bouquet to Marcy, "and chocolate for dessert, if that's all right." "You didn't have to," she replied, blushing slightly as she accepted the flowers. "But thank you. The twins pulled Grayson by the hand, eager to show him the apartment. There wasn't much to see. A small living room that also served as a dining area, a tiny kitchen, a cramped bathroom, and the single bedroom that Marcy shared with her daughters. "This is our drawing corner," Ruby explained, pointing to a small table in the corner of the living room, covered with papers and colored pencils. "And this is where we study." Lena pointed to the dining table, where their school books were still open. "And we sleep in there," Ruby added, gesturing to the room where a double bed and a mattress on the floor were visible through the slightly open door. Grayson looked at everything with genuine attention, without a trace of pity or judgment on his face. What he saw was not the poverty or the limitations of the space, but the signs of a true home. The girls, drawings stuck to the fridge with makeshift magnets, a vase with carefully arranged artificial flowers, clean, though faded, curtains, every surface shining from being so clean. "You have a beautiful home," he said sincerely. The girls smiled, proud, while Marcy watched him from the kitchen counter, trying to decipher if the compliment was genuine or just politeness. Dinner was served at the small table. They talked about the school day, about the science project Lena was working on, about the book Ruby had started reading. Grayson told funny stories about his work, about a client who wanted a star-shaped house and another who insisted all doors should open outwards for the sake of energy flow. The twins laughed, asking 1,000 questions. Marcy participated occasionally, more reserved, but gradually relaxing as she realized Grayson seemed genuinely comfortable in their small apartment. After dinner and dessert, the chocolates were carefully divided into equal parts. The girls asked to show Grayson their latest drawings. He examined them seriously, making specific comments on each one, treating them like works of art worthy of consideration. "You two can go get ready for your bath now," Marcy said finally, noticing it was getting late. The twins protested briefly but obeyed, leaving the adults alone in the small living room. A silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but full of unasked questions. Marcy poured coffee for both of them, sitting down at the table again. "Thank you for dinner," Grayson said, "and it was delicious." "It was just pasta," she replied, shrugging. "Made with care," he observed, "like everything here." Marcy looked around her small apartment, momentarily seeing it through a stranger's eyes. It was small, yes, simple, of course, but it was also clean, organized, welcoming, a refuge she had built with great effort. "It wasn't always like this," she said softly. "There were harder times." Grayson just nodded, not pushing, giving her space to continue or not. Something in his demeanor, the lack of judgment, the genuine patience, made Marcy feel she could speak. Maybe it was the exhaustion of carrying everything alone for so long. Maybe it was the basic human need to be understood. "I became a mother early," she began, her eyes fixed on her coffee cup. "I was left, but I was never ashamed of cleaning. It's how I provide food, pencils, and baths." Her voice was calm, without self-pity. They were simply the facts of her life, laid out with the dignity of someone who had done the best she could with the hand she was dealt. Grayson didn't offer empty words of comfort or expressions of pity. He just listened, with respect and full attention, as if her every word was important. "The girls are everything to me," Marcy continued. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing enough, if they'll have better chances than I did." "They are extraordinary," Grayson said softly, "intelligent, kind, creative. That doesn't happen by accident." Marcy looked up, meeting his gaze. She saw no condescension or pity. She saw recognition of her worth, her strength, her struggles and achievements. For the first time in many years, perhaps since her daughters were born, Marcy felt that someone saw her whole, not just as the cleaner, the single mother, the poor woman, but as Marcy, complete, complex, imperfect, resilient. A single tear ran down her face, quickly wiped away. It wasn't a tear of sadness, but of relief, the relief of finally being seen. From the bathroom came the sound of laughter and splashing water, the twins probably turning bath time into an adventure, as they always did. Marcy smiled, returning to reality. "I'd better go check before they flood the bathroom," she said, getting up. Grayson nodded, understanding that the moment of vulnerability had passed. Some stories didn't need to be told all at once. They could unfold slowly, like the pages of a book you learn to trust. "Thank you for having me in your home," he said, standing up as well. "That means a lot." And they both knew he wasn't just talking about the dinner or the apartment, but about the trust that was beginning to blossom between them. The friendship between Grayson and the small family grew with each meeting. What had started as a one-time act of help for a school performance gradually turned into a constant and comforting presence. 3 times a week, he would pick up the girls from school. Once a week, he would have dinner at the small apartment, always bringing something simple: fresh fruit, a special loaf of bread, chocolates for dessert. Marcy observed this evolution with a mixture of gratitude and caution. Part of her still expected him to simply disappear one day, as so many others had before. But with every kept promise, every respected schedule, that distrust diminished a little. On a sunny Saturday in autumn, as the leaves began to change color and the air carried that first promise of coolness, Grayson showed up at the apartment earlier than usual. "I have a surprise," he announced when Marcy opened the door. "Here, if that's okay with you, of course." "What kind of surprise?" Marcy asked, as the twins jumped excitedly behind her. "I thought I'd take the girls to see my office," Grayson explained. "It's Saturday, so it'll be empty. I can show them what an architect really does." The twins' eyes widened with anticipation. For weeks they had been asking where Grayson worked, what it was like to design buildings, how ideas on paper turned into real buildings. "Please, Mommy," Ruby begged. "Can we go?" Lena added, her tone more subdued, but just as hopeful. Marcy hesitated for a moment. It was hard to say no when she saw that sparkle in her daughter's eyes, the promise of a new world, of possibilities she herself had never had. Besides, after weeks of interaction, her initial reservation towards Grayson had turned into a cautious trust. "All right," she finally agreed, "but behave yourselves. Don't touch anything without permission." "You're invited too," Grayson added. "If you'd like to come." Marcy shook her head. "I need to get a head start on the laundry and use the sun to dry it. But thank you for the invitation." Part of her wanted to go to see this other world where Grayson lived. But another part, the part that always protected her from disappointment, preferred to keep some distance, some separation between their lives. "I'll have them back before lunch," Grayson promised. The girls said goodbye to their mother with quick hugs, eager for the new adventure. The journey to Grayson's office was partly on foot, partly by bus, an experience that the twins, used to walking everywhere, found exciting in itself. The building where the office was located was modern, with large glass windows and a sleek but simple facade. Nothing extravagant, but clearly professional. The twins looked at everything with wide eyes, absorbing every detail. "You're the first kids I've ever brought here," Grayson commented as he opened the door with his access card. "Really?" Ruby asked, feeling special. "Really," he confirmed with a smile. The inside of the office was spacious and well lit. The reception area, empty on a Saturday, gave way to an open space with several workstations, large desks with sophisticated computers, drawings pinned to the walls, blueprints spread out on various surfaces. "This is where I work," Grayson explained, showing them his desk near a large window. "I'm lucky to have a nice view." The girls looked out the window, seeing the park across the street and, in the distance, the city skyline. "It's beautiful," Lena sighed. "But the best part is over here," Grayson said, guiding them to a room at the back of the office. When he opened the door, the twins were frozen by what they saw. The room was large, mostly occupied by a large central table where several architectural models were displayed. Small versions of buildings, parks, entire neighborhoods, some made of cardboard and balsa wood, others more elaborate, with precise details and realistic colors. "Wow," Ruby whispered, slowly approaching a model that showed a small residential neighborhood, with tiny houses, miniature trees, and even small cars on the streets. "So how did you make all of this?" Lena asked, pointing to an impressive model of a tall, elegant building. "Yes," Grayson replied. "Before we build something big, we make small versions. It helps us see how it will look, to find problems before they happen." He guided them around the room, explaining each project: a school his firm had designed for a low-income community, a public park that had transformed an abandoned industrial area, a set of affordable houses, designed to be economical but comfortable. The twins absorbed every word, every detail. Their small fingers hovered over the models, not daring to touch, but clearly wanting to explore. "You can touch this one," Grayson said, indicating a simpler model of a 2-story house. "This one has already been approved and built. In fact, it was my first big project." With reverent care, the girls touched the small house, marveling at the details: tiny windows that opened, a small backyard, even a miniature tree next to it. "How did you manage to do this?" Ruby asked, gently touching the removable roof that allowed a view of the house's interior. "I started with a drawing," Grayson explained. "Everything starts like that, with a simple line on paper." He took them to another part of the room, where corkboards displayed dozens of drawings, some done by hand, others printed from computers: floor plans, elevations, conceptual sketches, technical details. "Here is the evolution of a project," he showed them. "Ties from the first scribble to the final drawing, ready to be built." The girls watched, fascinated, at the progression of the drawings, how a simple idea, an almost childlike sketch, evolved into something complex and sophisticated. "But the first step is always the same," Grayson continued, walking over to a shelf. "An idea and a place to record it." He took 2 small hardcover notebooks from the shelf, one green and one blue. They were simple sketchbooks, but of good quality, with thick, smooth pages. "For you," he said, handing the green one to Ruby and the blue one to Lena. "Everything starts with a line." The girls received the sketchbooks as if they were precious treasures. "Can I draw anything in it?" Ruby asked, stroking the cover. "Anything," Grayson confirmed. "Ideas, dreams, things you see, things you imagine." "Even if they're not buildings?" Lena questioned. "Of course," he smiled. "Drawing is a language. You can use it to express anything." The twins opened their new notebooks, feeling the paper under their fingers, imagining the possibilities. "What do you dream of doing when you grow up?" Grayson asked, sitting in a nearby chair. Ruby didn't hesitate. "I want to be a veterinarian." "I want to be a doctor," Lena replied almost simultaneously. Grayson smiled, not surprised. Ruby always talked about the animals she saw on the way to school, always stopped to pet stray cats, always asked about the dogs that passed by. Lena, on the other hand, was methodical, curious about how things worked, always wanting to understand the why of everything. "Those are wonderful professions," he said. "Do they both require a lot of studying?" "I know," Lena replied seriously. "You need to go to college and then do a residency." "And how do you know that?" Grayson asked, genuinely impressed. "I read it in a library book," she explained, "about careers." "I'm going to study a lot too," Ruby added. "I already know the names of several bones in a dog." Grayson felt something tighten in his chest, that mixture of tenderness and admiration that these 2 small souls constantly provoked in him. "I'm sure you both will make it," he said with sincerity. "You're smart, dedicated, and curious, the most important qualities for learning." The twins smiled, their faces lighting up with the validation of their dreams. It wasn't often that adults took their ambitions seriously. They usually received condescending smiles or comments about how their dreams were too big. They spent another hour exploring the office. Grayson showed them how hand-drawn sketches were transferred to the computer, how 3D modeling software turned simple lines into 3-dimensional buildings, how special printers produced detailed blueprints. When it was time to go back, the girls were quiet, processing everything they had seen. On the way home, Ruby held her green sketchbook to her chest, while Lena carefully flipped through hers, as if already planning what she would draw first. "Thank you," Lena said softly as they approached the apartment. "It was the best trip of my life." "Mine too," Ruby agreed. Grayson felt his heart warm. For children who had so few opportunities, a simple visit to his workplace was a memorable adventure. He made a mental note to provide more experiences like this, small windows into a larger world. A few days later, during a regular visit to the apartment, Ruby commented casually while they were doing homework, "We love to draw." It was true. Since the visit to the office, the twins were hardly ever without their sketchbooks. They drew before breakfast, at school during recess, and after dinner before bed. The notebooks were already starting to show signs of constant use, with slightly bent corners and covers a little worn from frequent handling. "Can I see what you've been drawing?" Grayson asked. The girls exchanged a look, as if silently consulting each other before nodding. Ruby ran to get the sketchbooks while Lena finished a math problem. The drawings were exactly what one would expect from 5-year-olds. Simple, direct, full of bright colors and impossible proportions. But there was also a surprising attention to detail. Ruby mainly drew animals: dogs, cats, birds, even a rhinoceros she had seen in a library book. Lena had a more technical approach, trying to recreate things she saw: the kitchen fridge, the school building, an ambulance that had passed on the street. "These are very good," Grayson praised sincerely. "You've been practicing a lot." "Can we draw together?" Ruby asked. "All right now." Grayson looked at his watch. He had planned to help them with their homework and then leave, as he had a deadline approaching at work. But the hopeful look in their eyes was impossible to resist. "Of course," he agreed. "What do you want to draw?" "Everything," Ruby replied enthusiastically. Grayson smiled and pulled up a chair to join them at the kitchen table. Marcy, who was ironing in the corner of the living room, watched with a discreet smile. The three of them bent over sheets of paper, colored pencils scattered between them. Grayson showed them a few simple techniques: how to create shadows, how to give a drawing depth, how colors could be mixed to create new shades. They drew houses with smoking chimneys, dogs with wagging tails, trees with branches full of colorful leaves. They laughed when Ruby drew a cat with wings. "It's a catbird." And when Lena drew a house with stairs leading directly to the sky to visit the stars. Time passed unnoticed in that bubble of creativity and joy. Even Marcy eventually joined them, shyly drawing a small garden with flowers. "The garden I'd like to have one day," she explained. When it was finally time for Grayson to leave, the table was covered in drawings, a colorful carpet of imagination and possibilities. "I have to go," he said reluctantly. "I have work to finish." The twins nodded, understanding. But Lena asked, "Wait just a minute." She took one of the drawings, folded it carefully, and handed it to Grayson. "This is for you." When he unfolded the paper, he felt a lump in his throat. It was a simple drawing, made with colored pencils, showing 3 people holding hands, one tall, with glasses, and 2 small ones, with ponytails. In the bottom corner, in carefully formed letters, was written, "Grayson, our friend. We both made it," Ruby explained. "I drew you and Lena drew us, and we wrote it together," Lena added. Grayson looked at the drawing for a long moment, unable to find words. It was a simple gift, just paper and colored pencils, but it carried a meaning that no expensive gift ever could show. "Thank you," he said finally, his voice a little hoarser than usual. "I'll keep it forever." And he knew he would. Not just the physical drawing, which would be carefully preserved, but the memory of that moment, of that pure gesture of affection and trust. That night, in his apartment, Grayson found a special place for the drawing, a small frame that would sit on his work desk. There, among sophisticated blueprints and important contracts, would be that simple reminder of what truly mattered. He looked at the drawing one last time before sleeping, smiling at the 3 figures holding hands. 3 people who, by chance or destiny, had found each other and, in the process, found something they didn't know they were looking for. Grayson treasured that drawing as if it were a medal. In a way, it was exactly that. The greatest honor he had ever received. The silent recognition that, somehow, he had become part of the lives of these 2 extraordinary children, and they, without a doubt, had become an essential part of his. Autumn progressed, painting the trees in shades of gold and red. 3 months had passed since the school performance, since the day 2 small twins had approached a stranger on the sidewalk asking for help. What had begun as a chance encounter had transformed into something deep and meaningful for everyone involved. Grayson had become a constant presence in the small family's life. 3 times a week, he picked up the girls from school. On Saturdays, he took them on small adventures, to libraries, parks, free exhibitions. Once a week, he had dinner at the small apartment, always bringing something to complement the simple meal Marcy prepared. The twins blossomed with this new presence in their lives. Their grades improved, their confidence grew. Ruby no longer shrank when classmates made comments about her clothes. Lena raised her hand in class, offering answers without fear of being wrong. The sketchbooks Grayson had given them were almost completely filled with sketches, visual stories, and colorful dreams. Marcy watched this transformation with a mixture of gratitude and caution. On one hand, her heart warmed to see her daughter's happiness, the opportunities they were having, the confidence they were developing. On the other, years of disappointment and abandonment had taught her to wait for the moment when everything would fall apart, when Grayson would get tired, move on and disappear from their lives as so many others had done before. One Thursday evening after dinner, when the girls were already asleep, Grayson remained in the small living room, a cup of coffee in his hands, his gaze thoughtful. Marcy was washing the dishes, the comfortable silence between them broken only by the gentle clinking of plates. "Can I talk to you about something important?" Grayson finally asked. Marcy felt a tightness in her chest. This was it. The moment she had secretly feared, when he would announce that he needed to step away, that it had been fun, but he had to get on with his life. "Of course," she replied, drying her hands on a dish towel and sitting down at the table across from him. Grayson seemed nervous, a rarity in his usually confident demeanor. He adjusted his glasses, took a deep breath as if organizing his thoughts. "I've been thinking a lot about Lena and Ruby," he began. "About their future." Marcy nodded, trying to brace herself for what was to come. "They are extraordinary children, Marcy. Smart, creative, determined. They have big dreams. Ruby with her veterinary ambitions, Lena with medicine, and they have all the potential to achieve them." "I know," she replied softly. Pride in her daughters was a constant in her life, as was the worry that she couldn't give them the opportunities they deserved. "The problem is, achieving those dreams costs money," Grayson continued. "A lot of money. Good schools, college, specialization." Marcy stiffened. She knew this better than anyone. How many nights had she lain awake, doing impossible calculations, trying to figure out how to stretch her minimum wage salary to cover not only basic needs but also her daughter's educational future. "We're getting by," she said, a defensive edge to her voice. "I've been saving a little each month." "It's not much, but—" "It's not about you not doing enough," Grayson interrupted gently. "You do more than seems humanly possible, Marcy. It's about the system being unfair, about talents like theirs potentially being wasted for a lack of resources." He paused, took a sip of coffee as if gathering courage for what came next. "I want to fund their education. All the way through college. They deserve the best. They're already a part of my life." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Marcy felt as if the floor had disappeared from under her feet. Of all the things she had expected to hear, this was not one of them. "No," was her automatic response. Years of hard-won pride and of forced independence, of doing everything herself, spoke louder than reason. "We can't accept that." "Why not?" Grayson asked calmly. It's too much. Marcy searched for words. "We don't need charity." "It's not charity," he replied firmly but without aggression. "It's gratitude for everything they've reminded me of." Marcy looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" Grayson put down his cup, his eyes meeting hers with a rare intensity. "Before I met them, I was existing, not truly living, working, eating, sleeping, repeating the cycle day after day, designing homes for other people to live lives that I myself wasn't living." He paused, searching for the right words. "Lena and Ruby reminded me what it's like to look at the world with wonder, what it's like to have dreams, what it's like to value the small things, an ice cream cone on a hot day, a colorful drawing, a bedtime story. They reconnected me with the boy I used to be, the one who drew houses in the corners of his notebooks and dreamed of building something meaningful one day." Marcy listened, feeling the sincerity in every word. When I look at them, Grayson continued, I see two people who can do incredible things in the world. Who can save lives, as Lena dreams, or care for creatures that can't speak for themselves, as Ruby wishes. But to do that, they need opportunities. And I am in a position to provide those opportunities. He hesitated before adding, I don't have a family, Marcy. My mother passed away 5 years ago. I have no siblings, no children. I have a successful career and no one to share its fruits with, until now. Marcy felt tears forming, struggling to hold them back. Her entire adult life had been a constant battle, against poverty, against the judgment of others, against exhaustion, against the fear of failing her daughters. The idea that someone could ease that burden, even partially, seemed almost unreal. Why would you do this? She asked, her voice almost a whisper. Why do you care so much? Grayson smiled faintly. Because they matter. Because you matter. Because in the last few months, the three of you have become the most meaningful part of my life. And because, if someone had done this for me when I was their age, maybe my mother wouldn't have worked herself sick trying to give me a better future. Marcy understood that. The physical toll of working tirelessly, the constant fear that it wouldn't be enough, the possibility that her daughters could have a different path, a smoother one, more full of opportunities, was almost painful in its beauty. How would it work? She asked finally, not yet accepting, but allowing herself to consider. I would open an educational investment account for each of them, Grayson explained. Where the money could only be used for education, school, college, books, supplies. You would continue to make all the decisions about their upbringing, about where they study, about everything. I would just be the facilitator. He reached his hand across the table, not touching hers, but offering the connection. I'm not trying to take your place, Marcy. I never could. You are their mother, strong, dedicated, incredible. I'm just offering to be a support, a bridge to the opportunities they deserve. Marcy looked at that outstretched hand, feeling the weight of the decision. To accept would mean admitting she couldn't do it all alone, something she had refused to acknowledge for so long. But it would also mean giving her daughters a chance she never had. I need to think, she said finally. Of course, Grayson replied, withdrawing his hand without any sign of offense. Take all the time you need. That night, after Grayson left, Marcy sat on the edge of the bed watching her daughters sleep. Ruby was hugging a mended teddy bear. Lena was asleep with a book still open beside her. So small, so full of potential. She remembered her own childhood dreams. She had wanted to be a teacher, loved books, imagined herself in a classroom full of children eager to learn. Life had taken a different path, with an early pregnancy, a failed relationship, limited choices. She didn't regret the twins, never, but she wondered what it would have been like to have someone who believed in her enough to invest in her future. The next morning, when Grayson arrived to pick up the girls for school, Marcy greeted him with eyes tired from a night of reflection. Yes, she said simply. For them. I accept your offer. Grayson nodded, understanding how much that acceptance had cost her, how much pride and independence she had to set aside. Thank you for your trust, he replied. I promise I won't let you down. It was only when the girls had left for school, when she was alone in the small apartment, that Marcy finally allowed herself to cry. They weren't tears of sadness or frustration, like so many she had shed before. For the first time in many years, she was crying from relief. The relief of knowing her daughters would have real chances, that their dreams wouldn't be limited by poverty, that the future held possibilities beyond what she alone could provide. The following week, Grayson took care of all the paperwork. Accounts were opened, documents were signed, a plan was established. He made no fuss, handling everything with the respect and discretion Marcy deserved. For the twins, nothing seemed to change. Grayson was still just the friend who picked them up from school, who drew with them, who brought small surprises. On a particularly sunny Wednesday, defying the cold that was beginning to set in with the approach of winter, Grayson showed up at the school exit with a novelty. He was carrying a picnic basket, something that immediately caught the girls' attention. What's that? Ruby asked, her eyes shining with curiosity. Today is an outing day, he announced with a smile. I talked to your mum, and she said I could take you to the botanical garden. There's a special exhibition of medicinal plants that I thought you'd like to see." "Really?" exclaimed Lena, already imagining all the things she could learn about plants that heal. "Really," Grayson confirmed. "Tyat and I brought a snack for us to eat there." The twins exchanged looks of pure joy before running to him, laughing with the freedom only children possess. Grayson bent down slightly, holding out his hands. Each of the girls firmly took one of them. And so the three of them began to walk down the street with its uneven sidewalk, Grayson in the middle, a twin on each side. They chatted excitedly about what they would see in the park, about the plants Lena already knew from books, about the animals Ruby hoped to find. To anyone watching them from a distance, they would have looked just like a small family, a father and his two daughters on their way to a common outing. But they knew they were something different, something equally precious. A family that had chosen each other, people who had met by chance and consciously decided to be part of each other's lives. From the school window, where she was finishing cleaning a classroom, Marcy watched them. She saw her daughters holding Grayson's hands, saw the three of them talking and laughing as they walked away. A few months ago, such a sight would have filled her with apprehension, with doubts, with the fear of losing them in some way. But today, something was different. For the first time in years, perhaps for the first time since she found out she was pregnant, Marcy looked at the future without fear. A future where her daughters would have not just the basics to survive, but opportunities to thrive. A future where she would not carry the entire weight of responsibility alone. A future with possibilities that once seemed unattainable. Marcy smiled, watching the three of them shrink in the distance. She returned to her work with a new sense of peace. Tomorrow, for the first time, did not seem like an enemy to be feared, but an ally full of promises. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.